Welcome back to the Sampan Viking on China channel. In my last video, a couple of days ago, I discussed about the circumstances in which a conflict between China and the US may break out over Taiwan. And I finished on a fairly optimistic note, hoping that the effect of the strategic Russian-Chinese partnership may have a pacifying effect on these tensions and lead to a peaceful and diplomatic solution to Taiwan and other flashpoints around the world. I have to be realistic, however, and say that whilst this is a hope and an aspiration, circumstances and the course of events may take the other direction. And it is a quick look at what that would mean that I'm going to talk about in this fairly short video today. The main precept of the Chinese-Russian strategic partnership is that if a conflict breaks out with any one party, the other parties respond by starting or restarting conflicts and flashpoints in their own areas of interest, and that this would stretch American resources too thin to be effectively able to fight any of them, and so it has to negotiate with Russia, with China, in order to set the stage for what is essentially the New World Order. This, however, is by no means a given, and America may very well choose to take another path. And some of the things that we are seeing happening in the world today may indicate that is what they are thinking, making all allowance for strategic ambiguity, of course, which means that they might be saying one thing on the surface and doing something very different below. But take some of the things we're seeing at face value, it may suggest we're not heading into a positive direction. If America does decide that it wants to force a solution on its own terms, it means it's going to have to make choices. And those choices mean that it's unable to defend all its interests around the world. And so it would simply have to decide which one mattered and concentrate all its resources to counter that one. Well, as was pretty obvious in the last video, that would remain Taiwan. And that means that all the other flashpoints, the Middle East, Europe, Ukraine, possibly Baltic states, and other areas, would be sacrificed in order for America to contain its chief peer competitor, the People's Republic of China, and secure its own primacy in its own Pacific backyard. Some backyard, but still that's how it regards it. And not unrealistically, because once you gain access to the ocean, the next stop is your enemy's coast. And if China were to get past the two island chains, then it's pretty much west coast of the United States before anything causes them to stop. So yes, the need for them to hem China into the Pacific region, Asia Pacific region, is obviously a strong impetus for them if they wish to retain their hegemonic ambitions. So, what sort of evidence have we seen to support this? Well, I think a very interesting article that we saw that supported this actually came from Lloyd Austin, the US Defence Chief, and he has criticised the British government for its current naval task force led by the carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth, which is currently on a deployment with an international force in the South China Seas. And Mr. Austin is basically saying that they'd be far better off staying in the Atlantic region where they can make a positive contribution to European security. This, I think, gives a clue that not only are the Americans looking to make the Asia region their own particular interest, is that they don't really welcome the inclusion of others, and that could be for purely practical reasons. European countries have no infrastructure in that region, so they would need all the support and logistics supply, etc., coming from the United States. It would simply be a layer of extra complexity that probably did not give them that much extra benefit in return. Far better in that case for the Europeans to stay in the Atlantic region and to protect their shared interests in that region. So what does this mean? Well, I suppose it means that, that America is concerned to contain China. I think they're also very aware that this is a ticking clock and one which favors China very much. The balance of power over the Taiwan Straits, over the South China Seas, over the East China Seas, extending out the second island chain, is shifting exonerably in China's favor and has been for a very, very long time. And if you look at some of the economic changes that have happened over the last 20 years, you see the magnitude of those changes. And these changes are not only going to continue, they are going to accelerate as China's economy continues to grow at the rate it does, which is a very rapid rate indeed, the fast growth of an economy that is already extremely large. But it also means that the military balance of power is going to change as well. China is, their shipyards are turning out military vessels at an enormous rate. What used to be mainly small vessels coming out are now becoming large vessels. China already has a large number of small vessels perfectly capable of giving good support to the Chinese military in a Taiwan conflict centered around Taiwan, South China Seas, East China Seas. In future, large carriers, large cruisers, large destroyers, and other amphibious assault ships will be the ships that are rolling off the assembly lines. And this will dwarf soon even the mighty United States Navy in terms of its ability and firepower. So for the United States, there is a definite window of opportunity after which military power, economic power, the growing resurgent, I should say, unification forces within Taiwan itself will come to the fore. At the moment, there is a pro-independence government. That government may not survive many more years, and the chances are once this government goes, it will be difficult to get another one. So maybe in the course of the next few years, this is the only chance the United States is realistically going to get. After that, the political landscape on Taiwan changes too much. The Taiwanese military, the Kuomintang, seemed to be pretty. I suspected they were pro-unification and anti-independence. Um, a couple of recent events have rather shown that this is again a lot stronger than even I had anticipated. There was a quite a big stink going around following a video put out by a retired general called Kao Koi, basically calling for the military to overthrow the DPP government and immediately reunify China, or at least when the PLA land, to unify with them rather than oppose them. And this has been echoed by other generals making other similar calls over the course of the last few years. Um, and when retired generals speak, it is pretty much a given that they are giving voice to the frustrations of serving generals and other senior officers who are, by dint of their position, unable to actually speak directly. So it's saying that they cannot guarantee the loyalty of the Taiwanese military for the cause of independence. They do regard themselves as Chinese, and the People's Republic of China is no longer the scary thing that it used to be. It's far closer to the Republic of China that they now have in terms of its economic structure and power structures, and they would fit into it quite comfortably. So that is that for Taiwan. If the Americans aren't able to make a move on it fairly soon in the name of freedom, democracy, and independence, that door is going to firmly shut close. But it does so at a price. And I think we are seeing preparations for that potentially around the world now. The withdrawal from Afghanistan, the withdrawal from Iraq, the withdrawal from Syria, the backing off over the Iran issue, it suggests that they just see that as a trap that they could never afford to maintain, and they're giving it up. And likewise with Europe. They can't be in everywhere at once, and so at the end of the day, the Europeans are there to defend Europe, which is basically the message about the voyage of the Queen Elizabeth. If anything were to happen, if the Russians were to move in concert with the Chinese into the Ukraine or the Baltic states, that would be a European matter to deal with. Um, it may not be quite as bad as that, but the Americans might well provide their ground troops and shorter range military aircraft to assist, because these would not be forces they could use in the Taiwan conflict, which is largely long range air, naval aviation, and a naval confrontation with Marines landing on the island to help secure it if necessary. But you have to say, from point of view of American security, does the loss of Ukraine represent an existential crisis to the states? No. Does the loss of the Baltic states represent an existential crisis to the United States? No. You could make a similar argument about Poland and a lot of the former Eastern Bloc countries. Nice to have them, but not exactly a existential crisis for the United States if they didn't. What is an existential crisis is having a People's Liberation Army Navy that has full range, uncontested, across the Pacific, right up to the west coast of the United States. So that is clearly where their interests are going to lie, and everything else will have to go, but be sacrificed if necessary, in order for the Americans to protect their true core interest, and that is to make sure that no enemy gets anywhere near them, a privileged position that they have enjoyed for over 100 years. Well, that's it. Thank you very much. It's an update, really, on what I was discussing just a couple of days ago and showing a couple of the other bits and pieces I couldn't include then. I hope you enjoyed. If you have, please like, please subscribe, please share, please ring the bell, please leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you have to say about any aspect of the production and content of this video. I'll be delighted to reply to you, and I look forward to you joining me again in the next video. Thank you very much.